Hi, in this lecture I'll show you how to remove accessories from photos by using retouching tools. We'll focus on the Clone Stamp tool to remove this watch, and we'll use the healing brush to remove most of her necklace from this image. Let me show you the final result. As you can see, they magically disappear. You have both the PSD and the images attached, so let's get started. I'll create a new layer and I'll first illustrate the difference between the Healing Brush tool and the Clone Stamp tool. We just learned the Healing Brush tool samples from an area and then tries to apply those pixels to a new spot by blending them together. This may be great for certain scenarios. For example, here for her necklace, I could use it with ease. I'll sample a similar coloured region from this right side. Now I'll paint over this line pretty fast. As I approach this chunkier part, it might give me some blotches, but if you insist on them, the Healing Brush will remove them. And that's because it tries to blend everything together with our surroundings. Let's also remove this top spot. I have to sample again somewhere to the right side. Great, it went away, and I'll continue to paint in this fashion, and because I'm on a separate layer, I have complete freedom to remove some of my edits with the eraser tool. On this left side is where things start to get tricky, and we begin to see this tool's limitations. As I try to remove these little details, blurry spots start to appear. This is going to be the same story for this dark spot here, as well as for her shirt. In these cases, I'm not happy with it. Let's pause this task and switch tabs. Here, I want to remove her watch. I'll sample a clear part of her skin, and I'll start painting over it. You can see it doesn't look right, and that's because Photoshop tries to blend these pixels together and keep some of those initial details. In this case, that's not what we want, so this is one clear case for the Clone Stamp tool. Let me step back and create a new layer for it. I'll name it Clone Stamp Watch. OK, this relies on a brush as well, so we can quickly adjust our size and hardness. Besides that, it has the same aligned feature, but in this case I strongly suggest you leave it checked. OK, we'll use it non-destructively by working on a new layer. Thus, the sample mode has to be set at current and below. Here's how this tool works. Where the Healing Brush tool tries to blend pixels together, the Clone Stamp tool just pastes them in. It works by setting a source point. In this case, I'll sample the left edge of her arm. Now I'll position it somewhere over the bracelet of the watch, and what's great is we get this preview that's showing us what we're about to paint. Mind you, this is exactly what we're going to get. There won't be any blending or pixel matching of any kind. OK, I'll click a few times and you can see how the watch slowly starts to fade away. As I move inwards, so does my other mouse cursor because I'm using the aligned feature. This means I'm now matching the watch region with her own skin, and because these shadows follow the same line, I'm getting a pretty good result. Just to reiterate the difference, if we create a new layer and focus on her face, we'll see she has some spots. Say we want to get rid of them with the Clone Stamp tool. I'll sample somewhere from this left side. Now I'll paint over these two guys, but look what happens. Because we have a bit of shadow on that region, that perfectly translates here. So the Clone Stamp tool, as its name suggests, produces perfect pixel replicas. Let me delete this progress and focus back on my watch. Here, it's a process that takes a bit of time and constantly resetting your source point. I suggest you keep it on a click-by-click basis, though you can click and drag if you're very confident in your result. The watch slowly goes away, and because I'm using her own skin, I don't have to worry about losing any texture or making it look fake. What's essential is you constantly follow the natural lines of your subject. Here, I'm trying to keep my source point on the same imaginary vertical line in order to keep these shadows. On the edges, you'll see I'm going to have some problems because her hand isn't perfectly straight, but that's not going to be a problem because I'm working on a different layer. That means I can further adjust these edits with a number of tools. Here, I'll use Free Transform by hitting Ctrl-T. Now I'll switch to Warp. Through this grid, I can nudge things back into place, so her natural line is going to be left intact. If you hurry along, you might not get a perfect result, but I'd say if you spend about 15 minutes on this watch alone, you should get a nice blend. In the end, it's a matter of going back and forth and adjusting your Clone Stamp layer. I found a softer brush does a better job, but you can always right-click and adjust it on the spot. Another piece of advice that might sometimes help you out is creating another empty layer for another region of your subject. So once the right side is buttoned up, you might want to switch layers for the left side. And as you work, you'll constantly resort to a myriad of tools you've learned up until this point. I'm going over it pretty fast because we still have that necklace to tend to in the other tab. If some spots are particularly tricky, switch to the healing brush tool and see if that can help you out. Unless it's a challenge, you have to make your life easier, not harder. Okay, let me wrap up this watch so we can apply the same techniques for the other project. In the end, this is how her arm looks without the watch. The before, the after. Brilliant. Back to this necklace, I'll switch to the clone stamp tool and I'll focus on this left side. Let me grab a new layer and label it accordingly. This is going to be clone. Okay, back to it. I'll sample her shirt and I'll click a few times. You have to make sure you're lining up with this crease. This is a pretty tricky area, especially on her skin, because we have this gap between it and the shirt. No matter, I'll adjust my brush size, and here it might be a good idea to adjust your hardness as well. Honestly, there's no one tip or piece of advice I can give you other than try your best, and in case it doesn't work out, either undo with Ctrl-Z or remove your correction with the eraser tool. I won't keep you any longer, so that's why I'm speeding through it pretty fast. I think you get the approach. In the end, I'll sum it up by saying the healing brush tool is great when you want to blend pixels together and make them match that surrounding area. The clone stamp tool is perfect when you need to add pixels without any other interference from Photoshop, and it's my go-to option when it comes down to removing people or objects. Okay, this wraps it up. Let me show you the initial shots. This is our starting point. And now, here's the after shot where we've used the healing brush and the clone stamp tool. No necklace, no watch. I hope you found these examples useful. Now it's your turn, so please download the images and start working. Have fun!